I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of Unleashed AF. Every single week we try to come here and bring you empowering information to help and change your life, step into your greatness and show your authentic self. We're your hosts. I'm Deidre Beecham, and I'm here alongside the incomparable Jenny Baddick. For those of you who are new here, I'm Deidre, Visibility Catalyst. I work with high-achieving women to obliterate their nice girl training. We don't like that nice girl training. We want to get rid of it. So they can capitalize on their inner badass and be the commanding leader that is inside of you. It's who you're meant to be. I'm going to hand off the mic to Jenny so she can introduce her badass inner space engineer herself.
That's right. I am Jenny Baddick, inner space engineer based on my history with both human factors engineering and hypnotherapy. So I help people kind of engineer their inner mind, the space in between the ears, to try to make their lives better.
Love that. Today we're going to be talking about the Olympics, but as always, we love hearing from you. So please don't hesitate to drop your thoughts, questions in the comments, anything that you think we're getting right, anything you think, hey, you know what, you might want to make an adjustment here. We love to hear from you. And then we want to make this as dynamic and interactive as possible. So please check out our website at unleashedafpodcast.com. We have a section on our website. If you have a topic you'd like for us to talk about or a question for us, it's WWJDD. What would Jenny and Deidre do? And or if you'd like to be a guest on our podcast, we do have guests on occasion. Just like last week, we had Deb Penner here. It was fantastic. Check it out if you want to know anything about meditation and her really cool story being on the road. But you can fill out an application on our website at www.unleashedafpodcast.com. All right, Jenny. So what are we doing today? What are we talking about?
Today we are talking about kind of a overall wrap up of the Olympics. We're not going to talk about all of it.
Oh gosh, no.
But you know, as a kid, growing up as an athlete, as a kid, especially in a sport that was in the Olympics, I've always been interested in watching the Summer Olympics, especially. I've played volleyball most of my life, so there were dreams when I was young of, you know, being on the women's Olympic volleyball team and stuff like that. So but one thing as I've grown older, and quite obviously will never make it to a women's Olympic volleyball team at this point, is just so many of the stories of the athletes that make it there are just so inspiring. You know, that on top of the fact that it's one of the few ways that various countries that could even be at war with each other can still come together and say, you know, good game or good match or whatever afterwards and go their separate ways. It's just, that's one of the great things I feel about Olympic sports or the Olympics in general, is it's that feeling of community, partnership, competition, certainly, but everybody respects each other there. It's very rare that you have like real like blow ups or, you know, like you do in like a lot of professional sports and things like that. So
soccer, especially, or
soccer, basketball, you know, all the big money professional sports. But it's just so refreshing to see how athletes act at the Olympics with each other. So I kind of gathered some interesting tidbits related to a lot of the women competing in the Olympics.
Well, we do have a bias. We do have a bias on this show.
Yeah, we a little bit of a bias. And I found it interesting that the women from the U.S., well, first of all, the U.S., if you're not aware, won the medal count by a landslide. So we had significantly more medals than the next country, which was China, overall. But more specifically, so the total, I think, for the U.S. was 126 or something like that. 67 of those were won by women.
Wow.
So over half of the total U.S. medal count was
Wow.
attributed to the women in the U.S.
Yeah, and
But-
you also said something right before the show. You said something about how even if you took the men out of the U.S., what was that statistic?
Yeah, that's the even more interesting thing is the only country overall with all their athletes, men and women, who would have had more medals than what the U.S. did with just their women was China. So if you took the men out of the U.S. and like if women got 67, they got 50 something. Yeah, it was 126 total. So 67, they got like 49 or 59 or something like that. So they would have been like 4th or 5th on the medal count.
And women
China
would have
been first. U.S.
second.
women would have been second, and then Great Britain would have been third with 65.
Really incredible.
It is. It's amazing.
And I think it's really important to you bring up a couple of interesting points, or something that brings up interesting points in my head when you were talking about how it's a very supportive atmosphere. And what's really interesting, I think that happens in just about any profession where, it takes a lot of hard work and dedication to get to a certain level of success. And then everybody around you at that level of success, they're all like, yeah, I know what it took for you to get here.
Right.
I know what it took for you to get here because I know what it took for me to get here. And so I think that's where a lot of that camaraderie comes from, is when you have people with a shared, even if it's not the same, it's a shared experience.
Mhm.
And that's why it's and it's also so easy for the people who haven't pushed themselves, and we saw that with this Olympics, where people inside the Olympics, everybody's getting along, things are going well. There was that one incident with the in the boxing, because the Italian lady, she got hit really hard, and so she was like, but then she came back and apologized for her antics.
Mhm.
And but it's really easy for people outside of that to be critical.
Right.
But people who have done it, they're not critical. They're encouraging each other and being gracious to each other. And even that Italian woman in the boxing ring came back later and just apologized profusely. And you can even see, and we're talking about Iman Khalif. I don't know that we were planning on going here first, but since
That's
it
fine.
came up, so here we'll go. So this is Iman Khalif, and she's the woman in the middle with the gold medal. And she just tore it up. She was absolutely incredible. But there was a lot of back and forth fighting outside of the Olympics for people who looked at her and made a decision. They looked at her and said, "Oh my goodness, she's a trans woman." Now, of course, a lot of people that came from the USA, because there's this current crazy alt-right consideration that is going, and also the alt-right Christianity movement, nationalist, Christian nationalism. Thank you. Sorry. And just attacking this poor woman because she looks masculine.
Right.
Because she looks masculine. So they made a judgment that this must be a trans woman. And it's another feather to put in the cap of crushing the trans women in America. When it turns out she's not trans at all.
Nope. Not at all.
Not trans at all.
And that's it. Also, finding out more about that later. And I think part of why people lobbed onto that was not just her looks. I think that's what that other boxer claimed when she quit.
Yeah.
I think she made a statement.
She said
about
she had
that.
never been hit so hard. That's what she said. She had never been hit so hard.
Yeah.
And then the people just jumped on and said, "Oh, well, she's trans. She's a man. She's a man."
Right.
And no, she was born a woman. She's still a woman. She hasn't had any operations to change her sex. After further investigation, it turns out she does have a Y chromosome, but it's XXY. She has two female chromosomes and one male chromosome. It is rare. It happens.
Mhm.
And then people were saying, well, we should ban her from the Olympics. Okay, so where do we draw the line? Because
Right.
Michael Phelps, he had an advantage. Where do we
Yep.
draw
He's
the
a freak of
line?
nature.
Yeah, so talk about his advantage. You looked it up before the show.
I
What
did.
is
Yeah. One of his main stroke that he really dominated in was butterfly. And one of the things that gives you an advantage in butterfly, I also swam when I was a kid, is having a huge wingspan. The more you can reach out and grab water and
push
push
that
it
water?
back,
Yeah.
the better. So he had his wingspan is 6'7".
And how
He is
tall
only
is he?
Yet he's only 6'4" tall. So his reach is 3 inches wider than what his total height is. And 6'4" is not short, obviously. So that on its own was I don't know that there's any other swimmers at his level that have that same wingspan.
Yeah,
And
and
another
it's just
example we talked about was Lance Armstrong back when he was doing
yes.
cycling. He actually has his heart is 1/3 larger than the average man's heart. And
Yeah,
so
and
if
he
that's
was winning
something
all sorts of yeah. Now later on it turns out that he was doing some bad stuff, but hey,
right,
all
but
that
before that
aside,
even,
yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
I mean, certainly it's fairly easy, I think, to draw the line at the doping line, right? I mean, that we can test for and make sure that they're not getting advantages that way, which by the way, Russia, I don't think has competed in the last few Summer Olympics, partially because of doping. I think this time it was more because, hey, you know what? You're at war right now, so we're not real happy about having your people come
yeah.
to this peaceful competition. But
Mhm.
but they definitely last time they were, or maybe it was the Winter Olympics, they were banned because of doping issues. They're still like on probation from that or something. But because there's such a spectrum of whether it's hormonal or DNA or whatever, things that could either give someone an advantage. And I even heard somebody talk about how Simone Biles has some kind of advantage, like biologically, which I haven't been able to like nail down. Well, she's like 4'8",
People are
so that
always
makes
gonna
it
hate.
easier to flip, I
People
guess. But
people are always going to hate.
yeah,
And and that was the point that I was trying to make in the beginning is that it's easy to hate when you haven't tried it yourself.
hmm
And and that's and I just to bang that point home that the reason there weren't issues at the Olympics because everybody knows how hard it is to get there.
yep,
And the armchair athletes of the world that want to criticize and say, well, Simone Biles has special whatever, she has special powers.
hmm
Yeah, she has dedication. She's worked her
hmm
ass off to get where she is.
yeah,
More power to her. I oh
yeah.
here, let's bring up let's go ahead and talk about Simone Biles. Let's bring her up, Simone.
All right. Well, one
There
other
she
thing I
is.
wanted to mention about Iman was it's not like this was the first time she was competing, right? I mean, she has
No,
a
and it
history.
wasn't
She's been boxing for
and
years,
it's not like she's always won.
right? She has, I think, 11 losses and 5 draws out of like 60 some fights that she's done. So there's other women that have beat her because it's
Yeah.
not like she's ever competed with a man. So, it just, there was so much that came out after the initial like backlash of craziness. But yeah, so
And it was craziness.
it was. So on to Simone.
Yeah, so here's Simone Biles with all of her medals. Is that crazy? Look at that.
She's crazy. Yeah. I mean,
She is amazing.
she is by far the most decorated female gymnast of all time. Like,
Yeah.
GOAT is absolutely a word to use with her. I don't think we'll see another Simone Biles in our lifetime. Because she's done it's an amazing how many medals she's gotten. Those would probably include both her Olympic and World Championship medals,
Yeah, it does. It does.
which is, I think she has, let me see, she has 30 World Championship medals and 11 Olympic medals.
Wow.
Of the Olympic one, she has 7 gold, 1 silver, and 3 bronze.
Well, and there's another example of people attacking somebody that she is a firehouse. And I just want to support her every time I see her. I want to say incredible things for her because she's amazing.
Yeah.
She's amazing, and more power to her. It's so incredible how well the gymnasts, the all of the women did this year. It's just so impressive.
Yeah. Well, and they said several times that there was probably more pressure on the women's gymnastics team from the US to make the team. Like that was more competitive than once they
Then
got
actually
to the
going to
Olympics
the competition.
to try to get the gold medal, because we have such depth now in our US gymnastics. And Simone, there was a little bit of that kind of talk with Simone this time, but the big backlash on her was in the last Olympics, the Tokyo Olympics, where she bowed out, did not complete the competition, because they kind of put it in the category of like it was her mental health that she needed help with. But it's like mental health on steroids, really. Not that she was doping, but it's more than just the mental health, like, oh, it was too much pressure. There's a condition, I guess you would call it. They just call it the twisties in gymnastics. But
Yeah, I've heard of that.
the closest thing I can relate it to, I think, after hearing more about it, is almost like vertigo. So if you can imagine the types
Yeah, you
of
don't
tricks
need
and flips
vertigo with
doing,
what they're doing.
exactly, it's dangerous. So it wasn't just that she was, oh, I can't handle the stress, let me drop out. It was, I could significantly hurt myself or kill myself if I try to go down and do this vault where I don't know where my body's going and how it's going to land.
Yeah.
It
And
was
then look, she came back and she was absolutely on the top of her game.
absolutely.
And what's fascinating to me, I know you had done a little bit of research about Simone Biles before the show, and she's a power. What she said, she's 4'8" tall.
I
Is
think
that what you
she's
said?
4'8". Yeah.
That's crazy. And she does
Yeah.
these amazing, amazing vaults and flips on the floor.
Yep.
But tell me, you had said that in your research that you had found out that, it's gymnastics is an expensive sport. It's a difficult sport. It's a
Very
trying
much.
sport.
Yep.
And it's difficult if you have things going right for you. If the world is laid out before you, this is a difficult sport. But Simone Biles did not have her life laid out in front of her.
No.
So tell us a little bit about her beginnings and why this is so even more so incredible.
Yeah. Her biological parents, both of them, mother and father, had some significant drug addiction issues. And so she was in foster care when she was 3, 4, 5 years old, I believe.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until she was 6 years old that she actually got adopted. And she got adopted. Who you see now in the Olympics when they always show her parents up in the stands is actually her maternal grandfather. So her mom's dad and his stepwife or his wife. So her step grandma. That's her mom, and that's who she calls mom and dad.
When you think about this, I mean, you think about the number of people that, because that's a tough life.
Yep.
I mean, starting out, you have parents that are addicted. You get shoved out of your home and go into foster care.
Mm-hmm.
That the mindset change that you have
Yep.
to overcome.
Yep.
On top of that, being black in this country, and I'm sorry, but being black
Yep.
in this country is just heinous and difficult. And to be able to flip her mindset around in order to do what she does, it is just an incredible feat.
Yes.
An incredible feat.
Right. And really, when you look at all that as like a total package, to think of anybody like downplaying her achievements or saying, oh, she was a quitter, she let her team down, is like completely ludicrous, right? When you know the whole story, and that's true of so many situations in life, not just in the Olympics, but it's so easy to just quickly judge and go, oh, how could you do that to them? Why would you? Oh, you're not good enough, or you quit because you don't have enough strength mentally or willpower or whatever. But man, if you don't know the story that's behind why they made that decision, keep your mouth shut. There's just so much. You cannot read a book by its cover and really make valid comments about it. So she, and on top of all that, it was her sister. She and her sister both were in foster care together. So she's looking out for her sister as well.
Wow.
And I'm sure there was crap that she had to deal with being as small as she was, right? I mean, little kids get
Yes, she
picked on
did.
a lot.
Well, yeah, there's even a
So,
song.
yeah. And
It's
God
not a little
bless, like,
song.
who knows where she would have ended up if her grandparents didn't adopt her. But thankfully, they had the resources because she
Mhm.
got into gymnastics shortly after they adopted her and never looked back. You know, and I
Wow.
think it was one of those things where it's like, wow, she's got a lot of energy. We need to find something for her to do. Gymnastics was a thing, and whew, she shot off. I mean, it's just her sister actually did gymnastics for quite a while too, and was good. But I think there was that like, oh well, she's never as good as her sister. So she was much taller, actually. So she kind of dropped out in high school or something like that.
Wow.
And they look very much alike too. But yeah, a huge, just so many things that she overcame. But I also saw her in an interview where she said to her, the fact that she was adopted wasn't that big of a deal. I mean, either, you know, the memories of prior to adoption, that's a
Mhm.
whole different story probably, but the idea of being adopted versus those are my biological mom and dad, she felt completely comfortable with those being her mom and dad. She's like, it's just the other people in the gym. Like when I said adopted, they were like, whoa, you know, and she's like, so what? I'm happy. You know, like I got the family
Good
I
for
want.
her. Good
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah.
That's great. And another person, it just made me think about this when you were talking about, you know, she was like, well, who cares? I'm happy.
Hmm.
And who I want to bring up right now, and I apologize ahead of time if I am butchering this poor woman's name, but Alona Maher,
Probably just
M-A
Mar.
Mar. So Alona Mar. Okay, let me bring her up. You'll recognize her if you don't know her name. You'll recognize her. She is the rugby. She became very, very well known for rugby in the Olympics this year.
Hmm.
But one of the things that she did, and I started following her. I think it's on Instagram. I'm not sure, but she started posting about body issues, and
Hmm.
because she doesn't have your what America would call, and I use quotes because hopefully we're changing that whole dynamic now. But she doesn't fit into the classic girl next door or what Americans would say is the perfect beauty.
Yeah.
And
Or the typical athlete body,
the
even.
typical athlete body even.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, she has some shots of her where I'll see if I can find them while we're talking about this, but she, she did a whole bunch of series of videos about her experience at the Olympics, and it was so fun to follow her and follow along, but also to watch her really stand up for her fellow athletes as people were picking on people for not looking athletic.
Hmm. I mean, especially in a sport like that, there is no higher achievement in that sport than going to the Olympics and winning a medal.
Right.
So for people to kind of question, like, oh, are you really that good? How can you be that good if you don't even look like an athlete or look fit or whatever their critiques end up being?
Okay.
And I
Here.
remember, as you're looking for that stuff, I remember
Yeah.
seeing something she wrote about her, yes, technically her BMI, which is body mass index, puts her in the obese category, but that's just something the insurance companies use. And she
Mhm.
pointed out, yeah, but I'm in the Olympics and you're not. So,
Right.
like, what do you want?
Okay. I think I found it. So let me pull this up real quickly. Yeah. So she had posted this image, which is her paws in the middle of, you know, fighting for a rugby ball. And you can see her cellulite here.
Mm,
And she was pointing out that, you know, that's just part of her makeup, and your body has cellulite. All of our bodies have cellulite. And she was just like, it's just a normal body.
hmm.
And I just loved that she was putting body positivity out. She went behind the scenes and took pictures and videos of other people that don't fit the typical, this is how an athlete should look like, and yet they're top of their field.
Yeah.
And who are we to decide?
Right.
Why does it have to fit the mold of what we think?
Yeah. Yeah. And when you, especially in her sport, one of the closest things that we see way more often than rugby in the US to that sport is football. And look at how many big freaking linemen are in football, and nobody's giving them crap. Well, they joke with them, but you know, like nobody's saying, well, you're not an athlete.
Yeah,
They're getting
William
paid
the
like
Refrigerator
millions of
Perry.
dollars.
I'm aging myself, but there was this guy, William the Refrigerator Perry,
Yeah,
because he
for
was
Chicago.
so big. He was such a
Yep.
massive guy. Yeah, he didn't look like an athlete, but I'll bet you he would tear you up.
Mhm. He's hard to move.
Oh,
Well, I used
God.
to, I mean, growing up, I lived in Wilmington, Ohio, and that was where the Cincinnati Bengals did their summer training camp every year before the season started. And I remember, like, when I was in high school, and I think one summer I worked at McDonald's, another summer I worked at some TCBY, the frozen yogurt place.
Yeah.
And so inevitably at some point while they were in town, Bengals would come in and get food from those places. And yeah, some of those they were so big. And like they would start ordering, especially when I was at McDonald's, I remember they'd order like one value meal or whatever it was back then. And I thought they were done. And I'm like telling them they're like, we're not done yet. Each one of us was ordering like multiple sandwiches, multiple things of fries. I'm like, holy crap.
Yeah, it takes a lot of calories to keep that body going.
Yeah, it does. But, you know, they don't get that kind of critique and stuff like that because they're men. And it's much more accepted to be a large, strong man and still think that he can do whatever he wants than to be a larger, strong woman. Because, we don't want you to be large and strong. You're supposed to be like.
Yeah, and where I believe all that comes from is that the patriarchy wants to ensure that women are weaker to men so that men can control women.
Mm-hmm.
And what do I do with a woman that is strong? You know, I mean, you even see women, I wouldn't date her.
Mm-hmm.
Strong. What? My ex-husband, I had started on, what is it called? Body for Life. I had started Body for Life, and I was following it to a T, doing all these exercises, very strict diet. And I was getting lean. I was getting really lean, and my muscles, man, I was proud of my muscles. And I remember my husband at the time, he saw me one morning. I was like, yeah, this is cool. And I walked out of the bathroom and he's like, I just didn't like that at all. And it's crazy. There's this perception that women need to be a certain size and that's it. And that's crazy because that is not how we're all made. We're not made the same. And it really takes away from the fun diversity that is out there.
Yeah. And, you know, that made me think of even it's important. Representation is important, right? When you can see stuff in front of you, either in the media or on TV or whatever it is, it normalizes it a little more. And yes. I remember specifically, we were just watching the Golden Girls the other night on TV. And when, what was her name? The tall one, Dorothy in Golden Girls. Bea Arthur. Yeah.
Arthur.
Yeah. I mean, certainly back in those days, there weren't a lot of people that were as tall as her and kind of, you know, she had a
she had a gravelly voice. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But that opens the door. She was on that show, which was such a loved show. I mean, it was so popular and so funny.
Very
still
beloved.
Today, it cracked me up. But kind of introducing something different like that in a show that's just popular and a lot of people are watching it anyway starts to have that kind of trickle effect of now we can have more of those characters, in other shows. And she had already done a show before. Maude was before Golden
Yes.
Girls, I believe. So she was already established as an actress. But there's just, it's unfortunate that there's all these kind of boxes or limited expectations of what people are supposed to fit
Yeah.
into.
Well, and that's so much a part of all of those categories, those isms that we're fighting against.
Yep.
The patriotism, the colonialism, the racism, the stereotypism. But anyway,
That's a new one.
but I mean, those are all those things that we're fighting against, and I think that a lot more people are waking up to the fact that they are systems that we are stuck inside of, then we don't need to be.
Right.
We can free ourselves, we can free each other from it. But it takes time, it takes effort, it takes consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not something that a lot of us, that you see a lot of. And that's what's been so exciting about Kamala Harris and Waltz. And next week, and I will talk about this again in a minute, but next week we're going to talk, that's going to be the topic of our show, which is going to be the Democratic National Convention, which will have happened by the time we have our next show. But, in light of that, I was kind of hoping we will still end with that. Let's go ahead and talk about Allison Felix.
Sure. Yeah.
If you don't mind, because that was I love this story. I didn't know the story until you shared it with me. So let me pull her up real quick. Let's pull up Allison Felix. Here she is.
Yep.
Another track and field star.
Yeah. She is actually the most decorated track and field star of all time.
Wow.
Not just in the US. And I did think not just women. I think most decorated, period, from what I read.
Tell me a little bit about Allison Felix. What did you find out about Allison Felix?
Yeah, and it might be a little confusing for some people if you were paying attention to the Olympics this year, because she didn't compete in the Olympics this year, but it's still significant to talk about her because she was at the Olympics and she is now on the International Olympic Committee. Awesome. As like an athlete liaison or athlete representative or something like that, which is impressive. I think that was a first of something. I can't remember if it was first U.S. woman to be, I don't remember what the first was, but so even though she's done with her competition years, she's still very actively involved in the Olympics. And she was very actively part of getting the first ever nursery in the Olympic Village for the athletes at Paris.
Wow.
So, that's a huge deal because, believe it or not, and this is something that I think a lot of people could overlook too, but there are women competing in the Olympics who may have just had a child. They're still breastfeeding. Can you imagine?
No, I can't, because I know just how much energy that depletes from your system, having had 2 children. And then there's also, and this is scientific fact, there's also the amount of energy that gets zapped from you from producing milk. I mean, it's a lot. These women are just mind-boggling. Now, on top of that, you have people that you have women that are on their menstrual cycle. I mean, it's just, what?
Yeah.
What? I
and
mean,
you can't tell that by looking at them either.
No, you absolutely can't.
Right.
You absolutely can't. Was there anything else you wanted to share about Allison Felix?
Yeah, the other interesting story about her wasn't so much related to this Olympics, but another reason that she is inspirational when it comes to U.S. women Olympians is because back in, I think it was before Tokyo. Yeah. So sometime between Rio and Tokyo, she got pregnant with her first child, who's a son, I believe. And Nike dropped her. They were a sponsor for her.
And dropped her because she got pregnant.
Yeah. They didn't see her coming back and being competitive or whatever. So she decided to, and I believe she was, or it might have been she was standing up for you know how there's an issue with Black mothers having a lot of what do they call it? Fetal
death.
A lot of fatalities, actually.
Yeah.
Maternal
Fetal
fatalities.
death. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think it might have been part of that too. Not just that she was pregnant. She might have been making a big statement about that because I think she did have some struggles and it was like a close call for her. So they dropped her. She decided, I'm going to create my own shoe brand and I'm going to come back even as a mother and come back to the next Olympics and kick some butt. And sure enough, she did. She had one child at that time. I think she maybe has two now, but before the Tokyo Olympics, she trained, got herself back in, used her own shoes, I believe, and that's what my assumption is, to win additional medals at the Tokyo Olympics after Nike had already like written her off.
Wow. And I know that's just amazing. I love the perseverance of women, and it's always inspiring to hear those stories to remind us of what we're capable of. And we're capable of, so much more than you can even imagine. Yeah. We do have one more story we're going to share, but before we do that, we do have a sponsor. We're going to go ahead and run our sponsor spot right now. So if you'll hold on with us, we're going to talk about Osreen Skincare.
We'd like to mention our affiliate sponsor, Osreen Natural Skincare, a woman-owned business that offers a variety of skincare products that are 100% natural, cruelty-free, and handmade using essential oils and herbal extracts. I've been using Osreen's Earthly Healer Lotion and noticed a wound healing significantly quicker than it had been without it. You can now get 10% off any of her products by going to osreenskincare.com/unleashedafpod. That's Osreen spelled AUSRINE skincare.com. Select your products and use Unleashed AF Pod as your discount code when you check out for 10% off.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And this is actually my favorite, one of my favorite. I can't say it's actually my favorite. I don't know, it's pretty high up there. It might be my favorite story from the Olympics, which is actually more of a scene. But and the person that it's about, the person that getting the gold medal is not American, Brazilian, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yep.
Brazilian. Her name is Rebecca Andrade.
Andrade is how they
pronounce
it.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the moment. If you haven't seen this, you're just going to love it, and if you've seen it, you're going to love seeing it again. I just love that.
Mm-hmm.
So, it was, and I can't remember what was the actual, do you know what the actual sport was?
Yeah, that was the individual floor exercise.
That's
for
right.
women's gymnastics. And
so,
Simone was favored. She was expected to win. But Rebecca is one that has been kind of on her heels for the last few years at, world competitions, international competitions. And it just took, I think Simone was so freaking powerful. She like bounced off the mat or something, so there was a deduction taken because she went outside the lines because she's just too freaking strong. But that's what opened the door for Rebecca to come in and get the gold. Her team, because of her, was expected to be the biggest challenge for the U.S. women in terms of the overall team gold.
Mm-hmm.
U.S. stuck it out and they got the overall team gold. So she was probably disappointed earlier in the week when that happened, but she got to end. That was the very last gymnastics medal that was given out, was the floor exercise individual for the woman.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Simone Biles ended up getting the silver, and Jordan Childs, also from the U.S., got the bronze, and they both were bowing to Rebecca because they know.
But before that, what was really cute is that, and I can't remember who said what, but one of them looked at the other. They both looked at each other like, "You want to bow for her? You want to bow to her?" And they're like, "Yeah." So each one of them were like, they were so into it. And again, I don't know whose idea it was. It doesn't matter, but they were both so into it. And then as they announced the gold, they bowed to her. It was just such a beautiful moment of support.
Yeah.
From woman to woman, and a recognition of the greatness in front of them. And
Yep.
and how beautiful is that? Not, "Oh, I should have won the
Mhm.
gold. Ugh."
Mhm.
It was, "Wow, you did great."
Yep.
And if and here's something that's really interesting. It's jealousy is such a horrific attack on your nervous system because jealousy it's a low vibration
Mhm.
and it attacks. And here's the thing, you can't I'm getting a little woo here, but you can't attain that which you criticize. Right? So if
Mhm.
I'm being critical of somebody winning gold, what's the incentive for God, the universe, whatever, to help me to get that gold?
Mhm.
Where is my energy being put in? If we don't celebrate each other, how do we expect people to celebrate with us? I mean, there's so much to that, but it was such a beautiful, beautiful moment in the
Yeah.
Olympics.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they were also aware of how hard she'd had to work. Not just that they all worked very hard to get there, but she had, I believe it was 3 different times, tore her ACL, which is a
Oh, that's
significant
right.
ligament
You
in her
told me
knee.
that.
There are many athletes that do not come back from an ACL tear. There was a
Oh,
girl when I played volleyball in college, she tore her ACL and she was on full ride scholarship her freshman year in practice one day doing the same thing she'd done a million times, went to jump and hit the ball, and when she jumped she went ah and then landed, and she was writhing around on the ground, never came back. Did not come back to
wow.
the team, gave up her scholarship and everything. So it's a significant injury. And so she had surgery 3 times since 2020 and still managed to get to
And
that
still
level
managed to get there
and
and
get a gold medal
beat
and
the
beat
other
the GOAT.
beat the goat. Wow. That is absolutely amazing.
Yep.
I love it. Was there anything else you wanted to add for the show? I think we've come to the end of all the things we were planning on talking about today. Was there anything else you wanted to add while I'm
Well,
here, Jenny?
I think one thing that does kind of roll off of that is, since we're talking about the GOAT being Simone Biles, another thing I remember hearing her say is that she's actually not as like crazy competitive as you might think based on how many times she wins. She said, I'm really just competing with myself every time I go out there. She's like, I want
Oh,
everybody to do
love that.
well. I just want to do my best. As long as I've done my best, wherever anybody else falls, that's great. It just happens to be that my best typically ends up on the top of the podium. I'm like, okay, fair enough. But
But isn't that a great attitude to have?
yeah.
What a great attitude that I'm just gonna try and do my best. I'm just gonna try and be better than I was yesterday. That's all I
Mhm.
want. And
Yeah.
maybe my best was yesterday. I'm gonna try and be as good as I was yesterday, you know? I
Mhm.
mean, how beautiful is that?
Yeah.
What
And
a
I'm
great
sure a good
philosophy
bit
of
of
life.
that is supported by the fact that she did have the adoptive parents that she had, which were really her grandparents, and they supported her. I don't think they ever told her she couldn't do something, which then also kind of reminds me of someone. God, I would love to get this person on the show. I saw her do a talk at a WPN event actually years
Mm,
ago.
who's that?
Um, and it's also kind of related to gymnastics. So Dominique Moceanu, who was a U.S. gymnast back in which Olympics was it, 80, 96 maybe, Atlanta, I think. Um, she actually has a sister who is a great gymnast, but has no legs. She had been adopted out because in their country, like that was considered like don't keep those kind of kids, adopt them out to
Yeah,
somebody in the US. So she was adopted by a couple in Indiana, I believe, and they never saw the fact that she didn't have, like, naturally she was born without legs. It's not like something happened, an accident, they had to amputate them. The legs just didn't develop. So she had like nubs, like there's partial legs that come down, but nothing beyond. It doesn't even go to the knee, I don't think. Um, but they would not even allow her to have the word can't in her vocabulary.
love it.
And so she went on, she was actually a tumbling champion.
No.
Like, who would have thought? You know, there's such a huge difference between when people believe it's possible for them to do something, kind of like what I was talking earlier. When you see it in front of you,
Yeah.
you can get there. But if you have the windows closed and you're not seeing it in front of you, or you're being told constantly that's not possible, or you're not good enough, or whatever, man, it's way less likely you're going to make it there. Now, some people, that can be like the thing that catapults them and go, screw you, I'm going to get there anyway. But
it's still, if you listen to that, really, it's still thinking on the positive. It's like, F you, I'm going to make this happen.
right.
And that is a very different thing. And, you know, it's really interesting. It's one of the things that I did not get for a long time is I thought that successful people, and to my credit, we're told this, right? We're told behind every successful man is a woman supporting him in the back, you know, so it's always where we've been told our whole lives, you have to have somebody in your corner. And while it's great to have somebody in your corner, and community is incredibly important, in my opinion, the first thing that has to happen is you have to believe in yourself. I don't care if the world believes in you. If you don't believe in you, it'll never happen.
Right.
And it took me a long time to figure that out, but that's exactly what happened. That's what entrepreneurs do. That's what athletes do. And that is amazing. And that should be encouraged and rewarded and highly applauded.
Yeah.
Because it's amazing.
Yeah. And even, you know, to extend over, we won't be completely biased. I'll mention one male Olympic athlete from the U.S.
If you must.
You know, Noah Lyles, the sprinter, has an incredible story as well. He had asthma growing up, like pretty bad asthma. Like, he was in the hospital several times for asthma. How does an asthmatic end up being the fastest man on earth, which takes a lot of breathing and oxygen to get to the muscles to run that 100-meter dash, or the two? He ended up getting gold in the 100-meter dash, and did he get a medal in the 200? He either got bronze or he was shut out of the 200, which is usually his prime event. But so there was some disappointment because he fully expected to win the 200. He was happily surprised that he won the 100, but thought the 200 was going to be a piece of cake. But this guy from Barbados, I think, freaking surprised everybody and ran like crazy. So there was some disappointment there because everybody was expecting, oh, Noah Lyles, he's going to pull off the 100 and the 200. Nobody's done that since Michael Johnson, you know, the gold shoe guy from back in the 80s. But he didn't do it. Yeah, there he is. But I was glad to see, because he's a big talker. You know, some of the track athletes are intimidating, almost like boxers when they're talking to each other about how they're going to beat each other. So he's definitely one of those. And he did after the 200, and he didn't win the medal. He was saying on social media or wherever, like, you know, as someone who grew up as an asthmatic and with allergies and ADHD, and he started listing all these struggles that he's had to overcome.
Yeah.
Dyslexia, like, he's had a lot of stuff he's had to battle and deal with to get to where he is. And I'm not even so sure he's shared all that information in the past. But he was like, you know what? I did all right for myself. And I thought, good.
Good for
that's
him.
That's the way you got to go about it, to keep going. I mean, you know, maybe he'll get a medal next time, or maybe he's done with his career. I don't know. But he didn't take it as, oh, I failed just because I made it all the way to the Olympics and almost got a medal. Like, you know, man, I had to overcome a lot of shit. And so I was glad to see that he was pointing that out too.
And it's good to remind yourself. I actually, I can't remember the name of it right now. I have a sheet, and it's a list of all of the different accomplishments that I've had in my life. And it's validation list. Jeez, I do have a name for this. It's called a validation list. And so it's just a validation for myself, because it is so important to remind yourself where you've come from, what you've overcome, especially as you're moving forward into something that's more difficult. And you look back and go, I can totally do this. Look what I've done before. This is nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good to be encouraged. All right, anything else you want to share, Jenny?
I think that covers it. I think that's a pretty good wrap up of at least from my perspective, the overall vibe of the female athletes, U.S. athletes mostly, but just in general, it was a great Olympics.
Really quite incredible. So if you've enjoyed today's podcast, please tell your friends. We'd appreciate it. If you have a topic you'd like to talk about, ask us any questions, please go to our website, unleashedafpodcast.com. Love to hear from you. Next week, we are going to be talking about some politics. And, it's so funny because I never thought I'd want to talk about politics, but I am loving talking about politics right now. And yes, we are going to talk about the Democratic National Convention. It will have wrapped up by the time we have our next show. And I believe in for a treat next week, or I should say I'm in for a treat because Jenny is going to be here with me and we'll shoot it at our studio right here in Durham, North Carolina. So that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being with us. And Jenny, once again, thank you for co-hosting the show with me. It's always fun. And I love talking about being unleashed.
That's right.
All right. Well, let's go ahead and end the show and we'll see you next week. Take care.
I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms